When this girl Mary had the world in the palm of her hands, she threw it all away when she had her husband murdered and then married the killer. Mary Stuart, who is also known as Mary Queen of Scots, who is our follower Ashley's 15th great grand aunt, was the Queen of Scotland from the age of 6 days old all the way until about 24 years old. Okay, so jumping forward to when she's 24 years old in 1567, she is married to a man named Lord Darnley. Now, they've been having some marriage problems up until this point, but while he's ill, Mary has been visiting him, so people start to think that they're actually reconciling a little bit and coming back together. But then all of a sudden, on the morning of February 10th, the church that her husband is staying in would explode. They would find her husband's dead body underneath the rubble of the explosion, but they didn't see any signs of strangulation or violence towards him. However, the public would come up with a few suspects that they thought were responsible for the death of their king consort, and among those suspects was a man named James Hepburn and Queen Mary herself. Now, when Darnley's father demanded that Mary try James Hepburn for the assassination of her husband and his son, she would agree, but the trial was a bit of a farce. They didn't allow Darnley's father any time to actually gather any evidence against Hepburn, and so in the absence of this evidence, the trial was only 7 hours long and Hepburn was acquitted. Now, here's where it's crazy. Only a little over a month after the assassination of her husband, Mary and James Hepburn would get married. Now, this obviously sparked outrage amongst the Scottish Protestant nobles who accused Mary of not only adultery, but also being complicit in the murder of her husband. And so exactly a month after their marriage, the Confederate lords would raise an army and capture Mary, and then they would take her in front of the crowds who would then denounce her as their queen, and she would be taken prisoner. She would be imprisoned in this island fortress called Loch Leven Castle. However, the Scottish people were still respectful of the hereditary rights of the royal line, and so while imprisoned, she would be coerced to abdicating the throne in favor of her infant son James. But this is far from over. 11 months after being imprisoned, Mary would escape being disguised as a servant with the help of some loyal supporters. The way that she escaped is they stole the keys during supper, locked the guards inside, sabotaged the other boats, and then rowed their boat across the lake to loyal supporters. And so Mary would flee down to England, thinking that her cousin, Queen Elizabeth I of England, would give her refuge because up until this point, they were exchanging letters while Elizabeth was in England, Mary was in Scotland and France, and Elizabeth was kind of playing nice, pretending to be friends with Mary. However, Elizabeth was Protestant and Mary was Catholic. Now, this was a problem because the population of England was still split between the Church of England that Elizabeth's father started in protest of the Catholic Church and Catholicism. And so Elizabeth was fearful that Mary, now being in England, would start to gain and garnish English supporters for her Catholic claim to the throne. And so she had Mary arrested and imprisoned. And so Mary would be in prison for nearly 19 years. And at the 18-year mark, she had a letter intercepted that she was sending to a supporter where she was approving the assassination of Elizabeth, and so Elizabeth had her executed the next year.